I never thought I'd be one of those guys who found out his wife was cheating on him, let alone with someone from our own home. Emily and I had been together for about 7 years. We got married young, built a life, bought a house, and seemed pretty solid, at least from the outside. Sure, marriage had its ups and downs, but I always believed we were in it for the long haul. That was until last month when everything started to feel off. It began with small things. Emily started canceling plans last minute, snapping at me over nothing, and she was unusually secretive with her phone. I caught her deleting messages a couple of times, but she'd brush it off with some BS about work stuff or friends I don't want you to worry about. Still, I shrugged it off, convincing myself I was just paranoid. The real warning sign, though, was her recent attitude during our sessions at the house with Tom, the dog trainer. We decided to get our old golden retriever, Max, trained because he was becoming unruly. Tom was recommended by a friend, and honestly, he seemed professional. But I started to notice Emily's attitude changing during those sessions. She was overly flirtatious with Tom, laughing too hard at his dumb jokes, touching his arm a little too casually, and there were moments she'd linger when she should have been focused on the dog. I brushed it off as her just being friendly, maybe a bit bored with me, maybe just her personality. But deep down, I was getting suspicious. Then came the night I decided to install a pet camera. It wasn't because I was paranoid. I just wanted to see how Max was doing when Emily was gone during the day. It was a simple camera I set up in the living room, pointing at where the training sessions took place. I didn't think much of it at first, just another way to keep an eye on our dog. I wanted to catch some moments of progress, maybe see Emily smiling and happy, normal stuff. But what I didn't expect was to catch something I could never unsee. One afternoon, I was swamped with work and Emily was out shopping. I decided to check the camera just for kicks. What I saw made my blood run cold. Emily wasn't just with Max and Tom during the sessions. She was with him in a way that made my stomach churn. They weren't just training dogs, they were in each other's faces, touching, kissing, and clearly going at it like a couple of teenagers sneaking around. The camera caught everything: Emily's hand on Tom's neck, his hand on her waist, and then, worst of all, her leaning in for a kiss. It was disgusting. I couldn't believe it. I replayed that clip over and over, trying to make sense of it. That moment was the moment my whole world shattered. I felt a rush of anger, betrayal, and a deep, aching sadness. How could she do this? How could she lie so convincingly, dismissing my concerns and smiling at me while she was doing this behind my back? I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. And the worst part, I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't even know how to start that conversation. I just sat there, staring at the screen, trying to process what I'd just seen. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of Emily and Tom kissing, touching, kept replaying in my mind. I kept asking myself how. I missed the signs, how I was so blind to what was happening right under my nose. I replayed every moment, every little thing I brushed off, every time she laughed a little too loudly at Tom's dumb jokes, every time she brushed her hand against his when they were alone. All of it suddenly made sense. I remember feeling this sick, hollow pit in my stomach. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was this overwhelming sense of betrayal. I thought about confronting her that night, but I knew I had to be smart about it. I wasn't going to blow up without knowing exactly what I was walking into, so I waited. I watched the footage again the next morning, trying to figure out my next move. I knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. When Emily got home that evening, she was in her usual bitchy mood, rolling her eyes, snapping at me over small things. She was always good at pretending everything was fine, even when it was. I played it cool, acting like I didn't know what I'd seen. Instead, I decided to bait her, to see how she'd react if I pushed her just a little. I brought up Tom like I was genuinely curious about the training, asked her how things went during her sessions. She rolled her eyes and faked that perfect innocent look, the one where her eyes dart away like she's trying to hide something. She said, "Oh, Tom's fine, nothing special, just dog stuff." I looked her in the eyes and said, "Really?" Because I saw the clips from the camera. Looks like there's more than just training going on. She froze for a second, her face going pale, then she started to deny it. "You're crazy. You're seeing things, it's just your paranoia. But I didn't back down. I told her I knew everything. The kissing, the touching, everything. Her face twisted into this angry scowl and she started calling me all sorts of names, telling me I was overreacting, that I was insecure, that I was imagining things. But I was. I knew the truth. And honestly, that moment was when I started feeling a mix of rage and heartbreak. I was devastated, furious, and disgusted that she could lie outright, look me in the eyes, and still keep doing it. I wanted to hit her, to scream at her for lying so easily, but I held back. I just sat there staring at her, feeling like I didn't even recognize the woman I married. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, thinking about how I was going to handle this. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore, but I also didn't want to make a rash decision. I was hurt, yes, but I also needed to get out of this toxic mess. The pain was so raw I could barely breathe. I kept asking myself how I was going to fix this, if I even could. I didn't trust her anymore, and I didn't want to keep pretending everything was okay when I knew the truth. The worst part, I started questioning everything about our marriage, about how long this had been going on, and whether I was just blind or stupid for not seeing it sooner. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't concentrate at work, couldn't sleep, and kept replaying everything I knew about Emily, her lies, her sneers, the way she acted like she was the victim. It was like I'd been living with a stranger all along. But I also knew I had to decide what to do next. Ignoring it wasn't an option anymore. I couldn't pretend everything was normal. I started planning my next move. I knew I needed more evidence, something concrete, so I set up a hidden camera in the bedroom. I wasn't naive. She'd likely catch on if I just confronted her out of nowhere again. I wanted to catch her in the act if possible, so there be no denying it. I also decided to follow her one day, just to see if I could catch her sneaking around or if she'd slip up. One evening, I convinced her to stay home alone while I ran to the store. I took that opportunity to hide the camera in the hallway, focusing on the bedroom door. I didn't expect much. Maybe she'd act suspicious or try to hide something. But what I saw when I checked the footage later was worse than I imagined. Emily left the house and I followed her at a distance, going to some fancy-looking hotel. I was sure she was meeting Tom there. I parked around the corner and watched her go into the hotel with a bag. My stomach clenched. She was definitely doing something she shouldn't be. I stayed in my car trying to process all that I'd discovered. She was in that hotel for hours, and I couldn't get her to answer her phone when I tried calling her. When she finally came back around midnight, her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess, and she looked exhausted. She was also unusually quiet, and I noticed she kept trying to hide her phone, like she was hiding 100 secrets. The next day, I decided to confront her again, but this time more assertively. I told her I knew she'd been lying and sneaking around. She started yelling, claiming I was stalking her, that I was crazy, and that I had no right to invade her privacy. She called me paranoid and jealous, said I was making a big deal out of nothing. But I had enough. I told her I had enough evidence, that I saw her going into the hotel with Tom, that I'd seen her with my own eyes, and that I wasn't going to be blind anymore. She went ballistic. Her face turned red and she started shouting at me, calling me all sorts of names: controlling, insecure, a loser. She tried to turn it around like I was the one cheating, like I was the problem. That was rich coming from her. I felt a surge of anger I'd never known before. I told her I was sick of her lies, her bullshit, her manipulations. I told her she could stay or go. I didn't care anymore, but I wasn't going to be played for a fool. That day, everything shifted. I realized I couldn't continue living like this, with her lying and sneaking around behind my back. Whatever love I had left was shattered. I knew I had to make a decision, either fight to fix this or walk away. I wasn't sure I was strong enough to stay, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I'd been betrayed in a way I never expected, and it was tearing me apart inside. I just hoped I'd find the strength to do what was right for me. After that confrontation, things got even more chaotic. Emily kept denying everything, even as I had the footage, the hotel receipts, and the countless little lies she'd spun. But her attitude shifted. She became more defensive, more aggressive. It was like she knew she'd been caught, but instead of facing it, she doubled down. She started throwing accusations back at me, calling me a jealous loser who didn't satisfy her anymore, who was just too insecure to handle her success at life and in bed. Honestly, I'd never felt so worthless, so betrayed in my entire life. I was torn between wanting to believe her or just ending it all right then and there. I kept asking myself if I'd missed something, if I'd done something wrong to push her to cheat, or if she'd just been waiting for the right moment to ruin us. The thing is, she made sure to keep up appearances. She dressed like she was innocent, but her eyes told a different story, cold, calculating, and full of lies. She'd dismiss my concerns, call me crazy, then go out again the next day, leaving her phone open for me to see her texting Tom. That was the final straw. One day, I decided I had to get some space, time to think, to breathe, to plan my next move. I told her I needed to be alone for a while, that I needed to think about what I wanted. She pretended to care, said she was sorry and that she'd fix everything. But I knew better. I knew the damage was done. I moved out for a few days, staying at my brother's place just to get some clarity. During those days, I couldn't help but cry in the shower, feeling like I'd lost everything that mattered: my partner, my trust, my sense of security. While I was gone, she continued to lie and manipulate everyone around her. She told her friends I was crazy, that I was the one cheating or stalking her. She painted herself as the victim, as if I was the one who'd betrayed her first. Meanwhile, I kept replaying everything I'd seen, trying to remind myself why I couldn't stay. The betrayal cut deep, more than I thought possible. I had loved her, trusted her, and she'd thrown it all away for Tom, for some fleeting affair that was nothing but stupid, reckless sex. I couldn't wrap my head around how she could be so indifferent, so cruel. When I finally decided to go back home, I knew I had to face her again. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but I needed closure. She was trying to act normal, acting like everything was fine, but I saw through her. I told her I knew the truth about her affair, her lies, the hotel, everything. She looked at me with this weird, fake smile, like she thought she could manipulate me into staying silent. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I was done. Done pretending, done hiding the pain, done being her fool. I said I was leaving for good unless she was willing to be honest and face the consequences of her actions. That day, she finally broke down a little, just a little. She admitted she and Tom had been seeing each other for a few months, that she'd been bored and selfish, that she didn't care about the marriage anymore. It wasn't some dramatic confessional, just cold, dismissive words that cut me even deeper. I realized there was no saving us. That I was the fool for hopping she'd change, for thinking I could fix what was broken. Walking out that door was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'd loved her, I'd fought for us, and she threw it all away for a guy who probably didn't even care. Now I was standing here, alone, feeling like I'd lost my future, my trust, my respect for myself. But part of me was also relieved. I finally saw the truth, and I could start healing from this mess. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what was left of my dignity and moving on from someone who clearly never deserved my love. The aftermath hit me like a freight train. I moved out completely, sold or gave away most of the stuff that reminded me of her, and tried to find some sense of normalcy again. But it was impossible not to think about her, Tom, the whole sickening mess every single day. I couldn't help but obsess over what I missed, what I overlooked, and whether I could have done anything differently to save what little was left of our marriage. Honestly, I felt like a fool. What hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal, but the fact that she lied so convincingly, played the victim, and turned everyone against me. I lost friends over this, or at least I thought I did, because Emily told everyone I was unstable and that I'd been spying on her, or that I was overly paranoid. The few friends still talking to me looked at me with pity, and I hated it. I hated how she managed to spin everything into her favor while I was left picking up the pieces, feeling small and humiliated. I kept asking myself, did I ever really know her? Was I so blind that I missed all the signs? I also started therapy, not just for the heartbreak, but to rebuild my confidence. It helped a little. I learned to accept that some betrayals are so deep they leave scars that never really heal. But I also learned I wasn't weak for feeling hurt, and I certainly wasn't stupid for trusting her. I had loved her, and I guess that blinded me to the truth for too long. That said, I refused to let her win, even if she thought she had. I wanted to reclaim my dignity, my peace, and start over. In the months that followed, I focused on myself. I threw myself into work, fitness, and reconnecting with friends I'd neglected. I realized I'd been living for her, trying to make her happy, and I'd lost track of who I was. Now I was rediscovering myself, what I liked, what I wanted, what I deserved. As much as this betrayal destroyed my trust, it also forced me to grow. I saw how toxic the whole situation was, and I promised myself I'd never let someone treat me like that again. Never again would I ignore the red flags, the gut feelings, or dismiss my own pain. Honestly, I still have days where I feel like complete shit. The anger, the sadness, the confusion, they don't go away overnight. But I'm learning to live with it. I tell myself that I deserved better, someone who respects me, loves me, and doesn't cheat and lie behind my back. I'm not perfect, and I know there are scars, but I also know I'm stronger than I was when I first found out. And eventually, I want to find someone who genuinely cares, not just someone who pretends to. Looking back, I guess I learned a harsh lesson about trust and betrayal. Never ignore your instincts, I tell myself. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you're ever in a similar place, trust me, get out fast. Because once the trust is broken that badly, you can't just glue it back together. Sometimes walking away is the only way to save yourself. It's not easy and it's not pretty, but it's necessary. And yeah, it hurts like hell, but I'll survive. I always do. Now I sit here months later, reflecting on everything I've been through. The pain doesn't hit as hard as it used to, but I still carry the scars. I've come to accept that some things are beyond fixing, and sometimes the best thing you can do is cut your losses and move forward. I won't lie, I still get angry when I think about how Emily lied, cheated, and betrayed me without a second thought. But I also realize that holding on to that anger only keeps me chained to a hurtful past. I've learned a lot from this whole nightmare. The biggest lesson is that trust isn't something you take for granted. It's fragile, and once broken, it takes a long time to rebuild, or maybe it's impossible to rebuild at all. I've also learned that some people are just selfish and manipulative enough to destroy what's good for their own pleasure or convenience. And that's a harsh truth, but it's one I had to face. What I want to tell anyone reading this who might be going through something similar: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how small they seem. If someone is secretive, manipulative, or dismissive of your feelings, pay attention. Protect yourself first, because in the end, no one else is going to do it for you. You have to look out for your own happiness and well-being. I also want to say that healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others. Some days I feel like I'm finally moving on, and others I feel that familiar sting of betrayal all over again. But I remind myself that healing takes time. Be patient with yourself. Don't rush to forgive or forget. Allow yourself to feel everything fully. That's how you grow stronger. Most importantly, I've realized that I deserve better. I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who values me enough not to cheat and lie. I won't settle for less anymore. I know now that love isn't supposed to hurt this much, and if someone truly cares, they won't make you feel like you're always walking on eggshells. So, I'm moving on. Not because I want to forget, but because I want to find a future that doesn't include betrayal. I want peace, stability, and someone who truly sees me for who I am. That's what's next for me, and honestly, I believe I'll get there. Because despite everything, I'm still here, still standing, and still hopeful. I may have lost a lot, but I've gained a new understanding of myself. And that, maybe, is the real victory.